This coffee cup kind of matches my shirt, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it up here.
Yeah, it does.
Today I choose happy. What's this one say? Oh, same thing. Okay.
Yeah. Today I choose sadness.
It's a yin and yang cup.
Okay, are we good? All right. Well, I have a question about vision that I got from the audience, and I'll read the question, and then I'll give a little bit of a preface before I get you to answer it.
All right.
So this client says, I've been working for years while my vision has been steadily deteriorating. I'm going blind. Over the past year, it's been getting much harder to perform my job as my condition worsens. I have an appointment coming up to check my visual field. If I meet the blindness listing, I'll use that as my sign that it's time to quit. In that scenario, would you still recommend waiting several months before applying for SSDI? There's no cure or treatment for my condition. I'm 61 years old. And then they say, thanks so much for all the helpful videos. So before you answer that, and what we'll do is we'll answer this person's question, and then we'll go into vision, and I also want to cover hearing because the way that they work is, I think, similar. So before we get into that, this person says if they meet the listing. So just really quick, can you go over, because we're going to talk about vision listings and then the RFC if they don't meet the listing, right? So before that, though, what would it mean if this person meets the listing?
Right. Well, there's visual acuity, like if you heard the old cliche, I have 20/20 vision. Mm-hmm. What that means is at 20 feet, you're seeing things that like they should be at 20 feet. And if you have 20/40 vision, then, I'm 20 feet away, but it looks like I'm 40 feet away. And then if you have 20/100, I'm 20 feet away, but it looks like I'm 100 feet away. And then listings level is 20/200. Mm-hmm. So you're 20 feet away, but it looks like 200. Your vision's horrible at that point. And this is best corrected vision, by the way. Or they also call it best corrected binocular. So using both your eyes, mm-hmm. If your visual acuity with correction, you're wearing glasses, is 2200, you meet a listing. The other one would be visual fields, and this is what our audience member seems to have a problem with. And you just got to think about that. Our eyes, we have, a field of vision. Like I'm glad we're doing a video because I can actually put my hands out here like that. I can see, if I stare at you, I can see that I'm wiggling my hands right now. I'm looking at you, but that's my periphery. So there's a field of vision that eventually I can't see them anymore. But somebody with a restricted field of vision, that might be, everybody should be able to see this pretty easily, mm-hmm. Without having to scan, move your eyes or, twist your neck. So when your visual fields are compromised, it just means that you can't see the full field. And what normally happens is it's not very uniform. That is, if you think of visual field as a circle, and that's the way it's printed in medical records, it's kind of a circle. If you think about it that way, the circle doesn't just contract and get smaller and smaller. There's like a contraction here that you can't see here, mm-hmm. and there's a contraction here and you can't see there. So we'll probably need to edit that out.
Nah. Continue.
Yeah, okay. So the visual fields, they constrict, but they don't constrict uniformly to where the whole field gets smaller normally. It's usually, there's a part of it, you lose your vision in that quadrant or in that section of the visual field. And when a certain percentage has actually been constricted, now it's kind of dangerous for you to do certain things. Driving being the number one thing. You can't drive anymore. Yeah. Or, you're looking at something and you're not seeing the whole picture because your visual fields are constricted. And it's a percentage. There's also a factor that they use in the listings. So if you meet the visual acuity listing, mm-hmm. 2200 in your best corrected vision, or visual fields, which they're so constricted that there's a formula, but I don't know it offhand. But it's basically your visual fields are constricted to the point where you don't see fully enough that you can just do regular work. Reading a page would be difficult for you because you're not seeing the whole page, or you're not seeing the whole sentence, and you'd literally, think about somebody reading like they're an old typewriter.
Yep.
That's we just don't do that. We do that with our eyes, and with the visual fields, you can't do that. It's just it's horrible, actually. So that's how they would factor those things, and that is basically the visual listings, visual acuity, visual fields.
Yeah, and then one of the things that stands out about this question, aside from the impairment that they're talking about, is they say over the past year it's been getting much harder to perform my job. And then they say if they meet the listing, they'll use that as their sign that it's time to quit. So this person's still working.
Right.
And even though a listing is very matter of fact, it's not matter of fact if you're still working full time. And we've talked about that before. Even if you are at a listings level, you meet a listing, if you're still working full time, then they're not going to move to that.
Never get
review.
there.
I used to, I read this and I thought of a person I used to work with. They had horrible vision, and it was so bad that they couldn't drive. And when they were looking at anything on their phone, they couldn't use their phone. They would use an iPad, and they were looking really close. And I remember when he used to get to work, and I was already there, and I would see him walk in. He didn't know who I was until I was like 5 feet away.
Yeah.
So this guy, horrible vision, but I worked with him, and he was full time, and he was good at his job too.
Yeah.
And so if he applied for disability, not only would he get denied, he would get denied without Social Security even looking at his impairment.
They'd never even request the medical records,
Yep.
much less look at them.
Yeah. So to this person's point, they say they'll use that as, if they meet the listing, they'll use that as a sign to stop working. That is a way you can look at it. You can't, there's no reason to apply if you're still working full time. If it gets to the point where that's preventing you from being able to work full time, then that's when you would qualify. And then the thing at the end here, the actual question that they ask is, in that scenario, would you still recommend waiting several months before applying? And the answer is no. There's no reason to wait. If you're disabled, you're unable to work, you're not going to be able to go back to work, there's no reason to wait to file.
Right. Yeah, and we've talked about this, and a lot of people think that we're just, going used car salesmen, do this and do it quickly. No, we're not doing that, especially in this case. If this person sounds like they're smart enough that they've actually read the listings, mm-hmm. which, if you ever have difficulties with insomnia and you want to fall asleep quickly, pull up Social Security's listings. That'll put you to sleep. Yeah. But this person sounds like, if I meet the listings and they're using shop talk, they've obviously done some research. If you've done that amount of research and you know what the listing is and you know what your acuity is, or you know what your visual fields are, the restrictions are, mm-hmm. Waiting is why, you already know that you meet the listing. So, just go for it. When you stop working, if you meet the listing when you stop working, first of all, if you provide them a medical record that shows your visual fields are constricted to the point to where you meet a listing, I don't ever like using the word quickly when I'm talking about Social Security. But as far as normal cases, regular cases, the mm-hmm. most common cases go, this case would go forward pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The lower levels would look at it. And if you provided medical records, or if your doctor weighed in on your case, the visual fields are this constricted. They do meet the listing. They're going to allow the case. Yeah,
no case is easy, but this would be easier.
Yeah,
and no case is quick, but this would be quicker.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they're 61 too. That definitely helps.
Obviously helps
that age. Yeah, I think with waiting to apply, a lot of people get tripped up because of the 12-month eligibility and then the 5-month waiting period.
Sure.
So the eligibility is that you have to be out of work or expected to remain out of work for at least 12 months.
Right.
A lot of people, they don't read the expected to be out of work, and they think, okay, so I have to be out of work 12 months and then I can file. That's not true. If you think you're going to be out of work that long, then go ahead and file.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is the operative word in that sentence. Expected.
Yeah.
And so if
Yeah.
you're expected, if your condition is expected to last 12 consecutive months, then yeah, go ahead and file.
Yeah, and then the 5-month waiting period, which is that when you stop working due to your health, you are not entitled to any kind of back pay for the first 5 months.
That's right.
5-month waiting period, and then you start accruing back pay. However, you don't have to wait 5 months to file. You can go ahead and just file, and then
get it out of the way.
Yeah, very few cases are approved in under 5 months,
Right.
but even if that did happen, then all that would mean is that there's no back pay.
That's right.
But you would still have the monthly benefit.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this in maybe the last podcast, or when that there's several cases a year that we take that we don't take them and call them pro bono cases, for free cases, but they end up being that way.
Yeah.
They're usually cancer cases or terminal cases, and the case is one. Like I said, I hesitate to use the word quickly when I'm talking about Social Security's processing, but the cases are won, relatively speaking, quickly in that 5 months. There's no back pay. No back pay. As a representative, we don't get a fee. But who cares? I mean, you need to get the case done. It's an easier case that Social Security can approve, and that's something that you don't have to worry about anymore. That Social Security disability case is out of the way. You can work on getting better or tending to your conditions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that answers that person's question. Let's talk a little bit just about vision, and then, like I said, I want to do hearing as well, because I think there's a lot of the same concepts. With vision, you meet with a specialist, they do testing, and then they're going to give you your visual acuity numbers,
Right.
et cetera. And then with your hearing, you're going to meet with an audiologist, right?
Yep.
And they're going to do testing to basically find the threshold of how loud does something need to be in order for you to hear it.
Right.
And those are similar. So and there's a listing for that as well for hearing,
absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So assuming you don't meet the listing, so you're not, maybe your vision is not 2200, maybe it's 2150, so it's really bad, but it doesn't qualify you
Right.
immediately, we'll say. Like, it doesn't meet the list, or better way, it doesn't meet the listing.
Right.
What would that case look like? What else would Social Security be looking for? What else should the client be trying to get together to prove disability if they don't meet the listing?
Right. Physically speaking, there are two aspects of an RFC, a residual functional capacity, and that's basically the rating that Social Security gives you. There's the exertional rating, which is, you can do medium work, you can do light work, you can do sedentary work, and that's based on your lifting and carrying capacity, your standing and walking capacity, and your sitting capacity. Everything else is the non-exertional limitations, and it's like postural limitations, climbing, balancing, stooping, crawling. And then you get to the special senses. You get to the visual limitations, some hearing limitations. Visual limitations, there would be a limitation in far acuity. You don't see very well far away, or near acuity, where you don't see very well near. Field of vision, that is one of the non-exertional limitations that is in an RFC rating that they can give you. What we'd be looking at is kind of a real-world approach to how does this impact you. You don't meet a listing. It's not gotten that bad yet. Either your acuity 150, 2150 instead of 2200. 2150 is really bad, though. So you don't meet a listing. The argument would likely be there's just no way that they're going to be able to make it through an 8-hour work day with those visual limitations. They're going to have problems misseeing things. They're not going to see things as they are until they get much closer. That's problematic. That's dangerous in a warehouse. So we would argue that there would be just actual dangers in the workplace for somebody whose vision is that poor. I'd say even somebody that's 2100, which is, you're not listings level, but you're still having a real difficulty seeing things. Field of vision is even worse, and that's on the RFC form too. Field of vision, driving would become dangerous if your field is constricted to the point where your periphery, you're not seeing somebody that's just past you, or you're not seeing somebody that you're passing. Once you get to a certain point, you can't see that. Operating any kind of machinery, again, in a warehouse or on a construction site, could you do that? Age would certainly come into play. If you're a 25-year-old and you have these kinds of conditions, there might be some work that you could do at the lighter or sedentary level. But then again, sedentary work, it's going to require that you see pretty well, because it's a desk job, so you're going to be reading computer stuff and stuff like that. So the argument would be that even though they don't meet a listing, their acuity or their field of vision is so restricted that they would not be able to make it through an 8-hour workday without posing a danger to themselves or others, or being able to do a job as expected by an employer. So that's how I would argue that case, and we have them all the time, by the way. That's one of the things that a lot of people have, especially the older you get. I'm not wearing my readers, but I'm sure people have commented on how I always wear my glasses on my shirt. At my age, I need readers. I literally, if I don't have readers on, I could not do my job. And there are people that readers don't help them.
Yeah.
My job is a sedentary job. I read medical records all day. I sit down at a desk all day. I type on a computer all day, composing briefs and stuff like that. That's my job. That's a sedentary job. That's every sedentary job. You're an adjuster with an insurance company. You're working in a bank. Blah, 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 blah. You're using your eyes all the time. And, if you need readers, no big deal.
Yeah.
But what if readers don't help you? What if your acuity is so bad that you really can't make out what that's saying on this, form that I used to fill out, in 5 minutes, and now I can't even navigate it because I can't see well enough. Yeah, that is debilitating, and at a certain age, it's going to be disabling also.
Yeah. And then for hearing aids, they look at the same thing, right? So for vision, if you can't see anything without your glasses, but then you put on your glasses and you're completely fine, well, then you can't say that you're disabled,
right?
Because Social Security will just tell you
That's
wear
right.
your glasses.
Yeah, best
and
corrected. That's
with hearing aids, is it the same thing? Yeah. How does that work with? Glasses are not, relatively, but they're not that expensive just to get glasses. But hearing aids are way more expensive. What about the client that says, I don't have hearing aids, I probably do need hearing aids, I can't afford hearing aids? That's a trickier one.
It's very tricky, and it would depend on the adjudicator.
Yeah.
I would say most judges would look to see if there is some statement in the case record from an audiologist or an ENT that this person could greatly benefit from hearing aids.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a lot of doubt on whether you're disabled or not, because if you had the hearing aids, and keep in mind Social Security doesn't care if you even go to a doctor, they don't care that you don't have transportation. They don't care that you don't have any money to pay for an Uber or a taxi. They don't care about that.
Yeah.
They expect you to go. That's just the way it is. And it's kind of the same philosophy on hearing aids. If you had the money and you could get the hearing aids, and your hearing would then significantly improve to the point where you could actually function in the workplace, mm-hmm. they're probably going to find you not disabled.
Yeah.
So the hearing thing, we didn't talk about the particulars of the listing. And you're right, they do test you. They put the headphones on you and they send beeps. But the beeps are at different frequencies. So there's low frequency, and then there's the middle frequency, which is like speech, and then there's high frequencies like sizzles and alarms and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And they test you at different frequencies to see what is the decibel level? How loud does it have to be for you actually to hear certain things? Most people, when they're starting to lose their hearing, they're losing the top end. So when somebody says S, it doesn't sound like S. It sounds like you don't hear the sizzle in that top frequency, and that's usually what happens. How does that impact you in the workplace? Well, think about it. If there's dangerous machinery in a warehouse or you're on a construction site and you're not hearing things, because we know something's behind us if we hear it. If communication is a problem, that you're not hearing words clearly. And that's also part of the test. They call it the speech discrimination hearing. Okay, this person is hearing so bad that he's hearing about 50% of what's being said, which is horrible hearing, by the way. So if the speech discrimination is really low, the audio testing is really low, but you don't meet the listing, then the way to argue that would be, in a workplace, in any kind of workplace, this individual could not interact well enough due to speech difficulty. I'm not hearing 50% of what my boss just told me. Or, I'm in a warehouse that I hear noise. There's noise all the way, and therefore I can't make out that somebody is actually talking to me, because the background noise, it kind of meshes in with their speech, which, by the way, that's one of the most common problems with hearing loss, is that the ability to kind of push out that background noise and listen to what's actually what you're wanting to listen to. It's almost impossible when you have a horrible hearing disorder. Everything is just the same, and it's just inundating you, and you just can't make things out. But if that was the case, then I would say not only is it debilitating, it's disabling.
Yeah.
That's how we'd argue that if it didn't meet the listing.
Yeah.
I think I answered that question. I mean.
Yeah. Well, with the hearing aid thing, I just thought of that because I've never really thought about that before.
Yeah, and it's the same thing as glasses. You're right. Best corrected vision, best corrected hearing. And that's what also they would do. An audiologist, the test is just like your vision test. If you've ever gone through there and they give you the little spoon to put over your eye when you're reading the Snellen chart, that's the one with all the letters and stuff like that. When you're reading that, let's check your left eye. Okay, now put that over your left eye. Let's check your right eye. You do that. They do the same exact thing with your ears. Your headphones, they're basically going to they'll just mask one, and let's try the right ear first, and we're going to hear that. Okay, well, they're going to mask that one, and then you're going to get beeps in your left ear, and they're going to be able to, okay, well, this is what your hearing is in your left ear, and this is what your hearing is in your right ear. This is your speech discrimination, because we said this and you didn't get this, or you got most of it, or whatever, and all that's going to go. And then they're going to stick hearing aids. They're going to stick that in your ear, and they're going to do the test again, and they're going to find out if the hearing loss is helped by hearing aids, or if it's some kind of sensory neural problem that goes deeper than just your ears, goes to your brain. People with tinnitus, they think that's an ear problem. It's a brain problem, actually. And if you have tinnitus, I can prove it to you. Put your hands over your ears, and they're still buzzing. Yeah, it's in your brain. It's not in your ears. But anyway, they'll put the hearing aids on, and then the headphones on again, and then they'll do the same test. What was the difference? Did it get better? Sometimes it doesn't get any better at all, and then they realize that the hearing loss is probably much deeper than just your ears, and obviously that's horrible. It's virtually untreatable.
Yeah, I think when I'm screening people and I'm talking to someone to see if we're going to be able to help them with their case and their impairment is vision, the red flag that I get is they're talking to me about this for a while, and then I ask if they're still driving, and they're like, yeah, I'm still driving. Yeah. It's like, well, that's really tough to say that your vision's so bad that you can't work, but you're still comfortable driving.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would imagine that's like one of the main pieces of evidence for vision.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. That's a question that anybody who's watching this that has any kind of impairment, that is a question you are going to get in every single hearing. It doesn't matter if you got back problems, doesn't matter if you have COPD, it doesn't matter if you have mental problems, vision, hearing. One of the questions that you're going to get in a hearing, do you have a driver's license? Do you drive? How frequently do you drive? When you drive, how far do you go? We talking going to the Quickie Mart a mile away, or are we talking that, I visit my mom and she lives 20 miles away? Yeah. You're going to get those questions. And sure enough, if you answer, well, in our intake, if you answer the question that you're able to drive, it's like, it's not really indicative of somebody who's disabled if you have vision impairments, but you're able to drive.
Yeah, and then on the flip side for me, that's like the red flag. The green flag per se would be someone is 56 years old. They told me that they've driven a semi truck for their entire life, and now they lost their license because they can't see anything. Their vision is so bad. That follows. That's a really, again, it's not an easy case, but that's a straightforward case.
That's a great case.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would take 100 out of 100 of those.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And as far as conditions go for vision loss, we see cataracts, glaucoma,
retinopathy.
Retinopathy, common if you have diabetes. And that's another thing too, is like we're really just talking about vision here, but if it's something like diabetic retinopathy, not always, but chances are the diabetes is causing some other symptoms that you have. So Social Security,
some neuropathy, yeah.
Yeah, they'll look at your vision problems, which is the retinopathy, but if you also have neuropathy, numbness in your hands or feet, maybe you're getting swelling in your hands or feet, that they'll look at the whole thing.
Right.
So, and it's not easy if you have all these things going on, but maybe it would be easier if his vision is really bad, but also he can't walk or stand at all. All this stuff, they work together for the case.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Well, yeah, as far as vision and hearing goes, I don't think I have anything else I want to bring up. I'm glad we did an episode on that though.
Excellent.
Cool.
If you have a question about your disability case, drop it in the comment section below, and we will do our best to answer it in the next episode.